What is it that makes the core Mario platformers so great and so beloved? Without a doubt, it's the quality level design. Ever since 1985 with Super Mario Bros., Nintendo has demonstrated their mastery in making these levels so fun and genuinely amazing to play through. A Mario game with bad level design isn't a good Mario game. They have never been about the story, nor have they ever been too mechanically rich. For years after the initial game that started it all, Nintendo would continue to innovate on this formula, while adding new power-ups and level elements to keep them fresh, without straying too far away from what made it work to begin with. But during the mid-90s, Nintendo asked the question of, how would all of this work if it was in 3D? Not being restricted to 4 directions and instead having essentially infinite directions to account for was no easy task for them, since at the time no other game dared stray that far into the 3rd dimension. But that didn't stop them. And in 1996, Super Mario 64 released alongside this new fancy console and took the world by storm. I don't need to tell you how revolutionary this game is, since you probably already know that, but the sheer legacy of this game cannot be understated, as this game basically became the blueprint for all 3D platformers of the genre, inspiring so many games to come. On Here's Why, I have previously covered both Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy, but that made me think to come back and dive into what came before them all, and to see just how much I would really enjoy it. My history with Super Mario 64 doesn't even begin with the original version of the game, as I grew up playing the remake on DS, without even knowing it was a remake. I remember enjoying it greatly, and being convinced that Waluigi was hiding somewhere in that game, like the sneaky bastard that he is. Good times. I might even go back and review that version someday. I eventually discovered the original version of the game through those old 100 Ways to Die in Super Mario 64 videos on YouTube, and went and got the game through Virtual Console on the Wii. I actually played this game fairly regularly, but I have never actually beaten it legitimately before recording footage for this video. So let's see how much I really enjoyed this game. I feel like the best way to begin looking at this game is by looking at how it handles its levels. And right from the get-go, this game wants you to know that this game will be nothing like the games that came before it. This time, instead of being thrown straight into the first level, you are given an overworld to explore through Peach's castle. This allows players to familiarize themselves with the controls, as well as holding portals into each level via the paintings displayed in the rooms across the entire castle. Within each painting you can find 7 stars that each give a vague hint of what the objective is through the title of the mission. Already a great departure from the level-to-level structure of the 2D games, since you will be exploring the same environment several times to find the stars hidden around it. These levels are really fun to explore, especially the early game levels. There are a total of 15 worlds in this game, and I want to go through some of the stands out for me personally. Babon Battlefield is a great tutorial level since there aren't many pits, or particularly dangerous enemies besides the chain chomp that can be very easily avoided. This level teaches you about several mechanics such as boss fights, cannons, Koopa shells, and ground pounding. Tick-Tock Clock is a fun mechanic where, depending on the time displayed on the clock when you enter, the platforms would move at different speeds, with 12 o'clock freezing them all in their place. Tiny Huge Island allows Mario to either be huge or tiny, as the name implies, which leads to fun puzzles and enemy interactions. And Big Boo haunts as you going on a ghost hunt and exploring a very spooky house, as well as hiding the statue that fueled endless Luigi-themed conspiracy theories. Some levels can even change depending on which stars you have collected. The most substantial examples are Womp's Fortress and Jolly Roger Bay. In Womp's Fortress, after you defeat the Womp King, a huge tower would appear holding yet another star for you to collect. And in Jolly Roger Bay, the pirate ship that was once sunken at the bottom of the bay has now risen due to you draining it in the first star. This now allows you to collect even more stars that were once inaccessible due to the giant ship. A smaller example of this that I find pretty funny occurs in Babon Battlefield. During the first mission, 2 giant metallic balls can be found at the base of the mountain rolling around, but after defeating King Babon, a 3rd ball suddenly appears, implying that these balls are actually the dead corpses of Babon royalty. However, after collecting a single star, you are thrown out of the level entirely and must enter the painting again and select the mission again. This kind of makes sense for the examples I just gave, since I don't think the N64 had the processing power to render an entire tower after defeating the Womp King. But what about levels that don't change at all? It just kind of ruins the pacing in my opinion. Take Hazy Maze Cave. For example, this underground area with Dory. You need to come here 3 times if you want to collect everything. And as a result, you need to make the trek to get here 3 times as well. It's like being fired for doing your job successfully. Not every level is a hit for me though, with Lethal Lava Land easily being my least favourite. Not because it's hard, it's actually one of the easiest worlds in the game, but because of its layout. This level just feels like a bunch of randomly placed geometry with zero coherence or reason of being there that just happens to be placed on a giant lava textured plane. Like, why is there a giant wooden log in a lava world? And is this red coin Bowser puzzle supposed to be challenging? The only good thing about the level is the volcano in the middle, which houses a sub-area that actually feels coherent and fun to play through. Wet Dry World isn't as bad, but the water level gimmick is just kind of boring for me. Some levels I just completely forget about, like Dire Dire Docks or Snowman's Land. Especially Snowman's Land. Like, why are there 2 snow levels in this game that are so similar? Luckily, these are the only levels I actively dislike, and most of them are pretty good. Each level has 6 stars, with one of them being a red coin star, which needs you to explore the level to collect 8 red coins to spawn a power star. These are some of my favourite stars, since they reward you for knowing the level's layout. Most of the time. Lethal Lava Land once again fails to provide anything of worth. They also have a hidden 7th star in each world, which unlocks after collecting 100 coins. I never go for these stars, as I simply find them boring and they just feel like filler to hit 120 total stars. The very best part of all of this is that you can do it out of order. For example, you can get the Chain Chomp star before beating King Bob-omb, or you can get the Treasure Chest star before the sunken ship. It's all your choice. My only complaint about the mission structure is that some stars are a bit too hidden. The best example being this star hidden in some wall in Womp's Fortress. How did anyone figure this out without a guide? There is zero clue as to where the star is. Luckily, only a few stars are like this. What makes all of these levels even better to play through is Mario's versatile moveset. That's right, he can do more than jump and run. He can even deck Goombas in the face now. He has so many moves in this game, most of which are incredibly helpful. Long jumps can get you across large gaps with ease, triple jump has both height and distance but needs a lot of space. Back and side flips saved me more times than I can count, and the dive is just plain fun to do. And wall jumps are useful in several tricky instances, but unfortunately it's hard to pull off consistently because the timing is just insanely strict, and honestly it just feels kind of random if Mario will jump successfully or just bonk his head and fall down. He even has an offensive moveset in this game. Another brand new thing for this game is that Mario is controlled via an analog stick, meaning the player can now control how fast Mario is moving, from tiptoeing to a full sprint. We take this stuff for granted nowadays, but at the time this was huge news. And if all of that wasn't enough, this game even introduces a health meter to the series. You are no longer limited to 2 hit points maximum, but now you can take multiple hits until your health bar reaches 0, and healing is as simple as collecting coins or surfacing after a swim. A controversial omission from this game are the lack of traditional power-ups outside of the 1-up mushrooms. Instead, throughout the game you are granted access to 3 types of cap that acts kind of like temporary power-ups in a sense. First is the wing cap, which allows Mario to fly, or glide technically. I could never figure out how to make this thing work, so I tend to ignore it sadly. It just feels kind of weird to control for me. The metal cap turns Mario into Metal Mario, for a few seconds, allowing him to walk underwater and kill any enemy just by touching them. Finally is the vanish cap, which turns Mario invisible, allowing him to walk through grates and some very specific other types of wall. Yeah, I barely use this one. These power-ups are super situational and underutilized. It's a shame, because there was so much potential here. Now shall we pull off the band-aid? Yeah, the camera, it's not great. I feel like the internet has overinflated how bad the camera really is, but that doesn't mean it's good. Camera controls weren't commonplace when this game came out, so Nintendo decided to turn the camera into a literal character through Lakitu. This means the camera can only go where Lakitu can go. This also means you'll find the camera feels like it's fighting back from time to time as you try to find the angle where you can actually see what you're doing. In open areas this isn't much of a problem, but closed-in spaces are just a pain to get through. There is the Mario View camera mode, but that only helps sometimes, especially if you want to go in a straight line, like here in Wet Dry World for example. So, duh. The story is nothing special. Bowser kidnaps Peach and Mario must rescue her. We've done this song and dance a few times by this point. But the way they went about telling this story was quite different at the time. The older Mario games either had the player read through the instruction manual for plot details, or use vague text boxes to outline your objective. But this time, the game opens with a letter addressed to Mario from Peach, which is fully voice acted as well. And then when Mario actually arrives to the castle, the sinister voice of Bowser tells Mario to get lost. And moving forward, a Toad informs Mario that the stars are trapped within the levels inside the paintings that must be used to progress and take on Bowser. You actually fight Bowser 3 times in this game, 2 of which give you keys to the basements and the upper levels of the castle, which holds more levels and power stars, and the final fight which rewards you with the star and the ending. The problem here is that the fight is the exact same every time, with Mario wanting to swing Bowser around by his tail and toss him into the bombs surrounding the arena. The only differences are in some new attacks from Bowser and the number of hit points Bowser has. At least the fights are actually fun. The easy to digest story makes the game inviting for newcomers, as well as easy to just pick up and play, just like the 2D games that came before it. Just like I said before, Mario has never been about its plot, outside of its RPGs, so this story will easily suffice. Can you believe that this game was once praised for its graphical quality? Everything is so blocky and strange looking, especially Bowser. Why is he so swollen? But is it weird to say that I find this kind of charming? The blocky character models, blurry textures, and crusty sound effects, it makes me feel like I'm experiencing a historical artifact in a sense. A fun graphical quirk is that when Mario is a decent distance away from the camera, he switches to a low poly version of his character model to save memory. On old school CRTs, this was really hard to spot, but nowadays it's really easy to notice, especially through the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection on Switch, which is what I played to collect footage. It's worth noting too that this is the first real Mario game to give the plumber a voice, and by extension a real personality. Charles Martinet is the perfect voice for him. The few voice lines he has just feel so right, you know? The jovial, high-pitched wahoos and yippies gives this character life. A lot of these plumbers' voice lines are burned into our minds permanently. This soundtrack is also one of Koji Kondo's best works, just from Dire Dire Docks alone. The other songs are good too, even if some of them kind of outstay their welcome a bit. Just like how the slide music that plays in Tick-Tock Clock for some reason. The Bowser level soundtrack also hits its mark perfectly too, the eerie, tense music truly giving the sense of something fierce looming above you. But Dire Dire Docks is the song everyone talked about with this game. The smooth, relaxing tune mixes well with the blue underwater environments that it's found in. Super Mario 64 is a game that's limited by its age. It did what it could at the time and it did it really well. But it's also a game fueled by nostalgia. When someone has this game as their favourite in the series, it's usually always because of their nostalgic attachment to it. Their rose-tinted glasses, if you will. And of course there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'll be the first to admit that my love for games like Galaxy are partially made through nostalgia. But playing Super Mario 64 today, while the game is still fun, its big issues start to become more apparent as the game progresses. And I start thinking to myself, I could be playing Galaxy or Odyssey right now. And after all of that though, what we have here is a marvelous game where, without it, games like Banjo-Kazooie, Sonic Adventure, or even Ocarina of Time might not even exist. This game created so much, not only for the Mario series, but for the gaming industry as a whole. I'd recommend this game for pretty much anyone who is into gaming even a little bit. You don't have to beat it, just try it. You'll probably find some enjoyment out of this game like the millions of others. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Here's Why. I'm having so much fun making these, which is likely evident through the sheer number of videos I've made in only a few months. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed these videos as much as I have.